There is an interesting trend on LinkedIn as more and more people are looking for work and more white collar professionals are getting laid off from their jobs. And this trend is going to get you in trouble. I'm Justin Hitt from Inside Strategic Relations, where we talk about building business relationships to increase profits. Now, those profits come from strong business connections, the ability to find new opportunities, and your ability to communicate your needs so that you can have them matched with the services you deliver. So I get these LinkedIn requests to connect. Many times these are through mutual connections. So it's somebody I already know and somebody in their network has reached out and said, "Hey Justin, let's connect." I had an interesting one today where my usual response on LinkedIn is, "Hey, I hope you're doing fine. Um, you know, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know." And that's really just opening the door for questions to come up because no request is absurd. Any request that you make to somebody else, if you have some basis for making it, is just fine. But here's the thing: I'm starting to get more requests that are, uh, if I say if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know, and they come back and says, I will likely come to you for a good word for me when I apply for a better job. Okay, so a lot of people are doing this. This is not the only person, but they basically want me to be a reference for them within the LinkedIn community, I guess, to when they go to get a job. I am the worst reference possible for you. This shows they don't know me very much because I'm going to be blatantly honest about an individual. So if somebody who's connected to me on LinkedIn, who contacts me, has an employer contact me and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a reference on so and so," I'm going to say, "Hey, we just connected on LinkedIn a little while ago. I don't know much about this person." Because my reputation is on the line. If this happens to you on LinkedIn, this happens to you in a business environment, if you don't know somebody's work, you cannot make a recommendation for them. Now, when I do make recommendations for former employees, for example, for people I've worked on projects with, I will write a letter of accommodation. I won't say anything bad. If I have nothing to say, I just won't make a recommendation, but I will write specific examples of how this person produced, how this person did good results. I'll invest in that because that individual has already invested in a relationship. They've invested in a connection. So if you're doing this, asking people you don't even know for recommendations, it can backfire because they could say something that conflicts with what is actual reality. They will say something that doesn't align with what you're saying, but also it weakens the possibility of future connection with that individual because you've asked for something without earning it. What you can do instead is to start what we call a Dream 100 list. Okay, this is a list of the decision makers and the individuals who can bless favor in your direction. So these are people who can make a hiring decision, who can buy your products and services. And rather than connecting with them, asking them for referrals, you also make a list of the 100 people in your network, the people you've worked with in the past, the people you've connected with in the past, and who really know what you do and what you understand, like the knowledge you can bring to the table. Now, it may be easy to make a list of people who can possibly hire you, and it may be extremely difficult to make a list of people who could recommend you, people who understand your work, who know your work. I've been in situations myself where I have some people I know I can turn to and they're going to give me a favorable recommendation. They were a past manager, they were a peer on a team, they were a past internal customer, and I know they're going to give a favorable recommendation. Now, it's a lot of burden on their part to do so, and I understand that. It's also in some cases against the rules of the organization they work for. So when I work for Fortune 100 companies, I am not permitted to give a recommendation for somebody in the same organization or even in another organization because it would be an implied endorsement by the corporation. That's their policy. But here's my point. If you're not cultivating those individuals who can give you a positive recommendation, then you don't have the context to ask for a recommendation, and they don't have the context to give a recommendation, and then it will sound sour. So this person here says because it's LinkedIn after all. Um, a lot of hiring managers and recruiters know that the connections on LinkedIn are extremely weak. If we know that LinkedIn is weak connections, the only solution is to make strong connections. These strong connections, again, I'd rather you target people you've actually worked with. I know target's probably not the best word, but you're going to make a list of the people you've worked with in the past. And you may start out by reaching out to them on their birthdays, reaching out to them with a note of, hey, I'm just trying to catch up. We worked together on such and such a project. You're going to reestablish the relationship or connection. You might reach out to them with a soft ask. Hey, I've started a podcast or I've started a newsletter and I'm just looking for a little bit of feedback. And since we've worked together, if it's not too much trouble, please take a look at this. And then you write content specifically going to benefit them. Now, you're also writing content specifically benefits those in your Dream 100 because you're focusing on those people who can hire you. Just like my Essentials of Risk Management. When I put that together, it's primarily for peers in the industry and new people in the industry, but it's written in such a way to demonstrate to managers that I can play a director role, I can play a manager role, and I can mentor a team. My point being is that you've got to put the work out up front. When you put the work out up front, you've made deposits in the relationship system in order to gain something out. You also help yourself stay top of mind. Now, you and I know that it's easy to just reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and say, hey, can you give me a recommendation when the time comes? That's just easy to do. What's better is to reach out, to connect, to make meaningful connections, to build your credibility in an industry, or at least with the people you've worked with in the past, to share ideas, to share opportunities. That way, you've already paid in advance for a favorable recommendation. See, someone's own reputation is on the line. I've got thousands of LinkedIn connections. I've got thousands of newsletter subscribers. If I went around and made recommendations for everybody that asks for it, it would dilute the value of the recommendation that I have. Not that everybody's going to know, but I'll, if all I know somebody is by their LinkedIn profile and a few exchanges on a message board, that's not enough to give a recommendation. And I'm going to have to be honest and say, hey, look, we've only interacted on the LinkedIn. I've never met this person in real life. And I'm at least saying that to myself before I would respond to a request for a recommendation. Now, those people that have been on my team know that I'll go above and beyond in order to help you find a better opportunity, especially if my organization can't provide it for you, you've outgrown what we can do here, or you are going out on your own and you're taking the skills that you've gained here. I want to make sure that those people are taken care of for one main reason. They've invested in making my organization what it is today. I want to make sure that they go to a more powerful position so that they can bring along my organization or so that they can connect the dots in our greater network of connections. So there is value in building these weak connections only if you're willing to cultivate those connections. There is value to use LinkedIn when you understand that it's an information collection device, not actually a social media network. You can't say anything you want on LinkedIn. You can't advocate or direct sell what you're doing. It's just a user generated content message board that's primarily benefiting the LinkedIn platform because they sell your data to the rest of the people. What really matters is what you're doing offline. It's the postcard, it's the birthday card, it's the email message. And I know I drop the ball when it comes to this. I've made too many connections over the years. I am constantly trimming down my contact manager. I've got 4,700 contacts in my contact manager. There's no way possible I'm going to stay in touch with all those folks other than using the newsletters. But then I can't use the newsletter because it's almost $1 an issue to mail out unless I'm going to build up something of value that would pay back, which again is direct services in my case. In your case, it could be something different. It could be having your internal list of folks who can recommend you, including people who you could hire to solve problems on your team because maybe you're a manager, maybe you're a director. It could be people who might be looking out for you when new opportunities come up because some of those people on that list are managers. Now, there are going to be some folks that are completely irritated that you're following up with them. I used to send a prospect newsletter to my clients, and then I added some friends and folks who were peers that I've worked with in the past, and they just didn't understand what I was doing because I was sending them a newsletter, and they're like, well, why are you sending me a newsletter? I'm never going to be your client. I said, yeah, but I want to stay in touch and see what's going on. They preferred a more personal connection. Um, There have been people I've worked with in the past that while I'm working with them, they are congenial, they are friendly, but as soon as I'm not in the organization anymore, or as soon as my consulting stilt's done, they just ghost you. That's the nature of business. So again, that 100 people on that list is going to change as those people become friends or stay connected. They're going to elevate in that list, and you're going to end up with maybe 5 or 10 really good friends out of those people you've interacted with. Maybe you've worked with them in the past, maybe you have similar interests, but it takes effort. You've got to put in the effort. Again, the effort includes following up on people's birthdays, periodically touching base to see how they've done. I've just noticed the gentleman I used to work with is now working for Deloitte Consulting, and I hadn't realized he'd moved up like that. We're not connected on LinkedIn. I can contact him through other platforms. I'm going to send him a quick note and say, "Hey, I just noticed you're at Deloitte. I hope everything's going well with you." And very often those connections are just not necessarily staying top of mind, but you have to have a sincere interest in the other person. I'm thankful for this person. When I worked with them, I gave them recommendations in the past, and I'm happy to see that they moved to another organization because their career is growing. My point being is the benefit comes from your effort, not from the situation. So just because you're connected on LinkedIn, just because you're connected in a message board, just because you're on the same Telegram group, doesn't mean there is you can always ask, but it doesn't mean there's a right of response. You want to make sure you're investing in these relationships. They're just as valuable as your career. They're just as valuable as anything else. And then when you're slacking on this, make sure you step it back up. It's not going to be a perfect thing. You might have something going on in your life and you don't really feel like you're connecting. You might have some frustrations. Some of these friends may not be, they may be toxic for you and you have to cut them off your list. You have to be able to make those decisions and you need to step it up. I know people who send hundreds of personal letters a month. Okay, they're not syndicating. They're sitting down in their free time, spending probably about an hour or two a day writing things down, and it reflects in their. Now they're not writing big letters. They're writing. They're not as verbose as I am. They're writing like on an index card size message. Hey, I saw in the news that you had just spoke at such and such an event. Congratulations. I hope things are going well. Those, and they include a clipping, for example. Lastly, is you want to do this out of sincerity and not necessarily just out of what you gain. The internet has disconnected people more than ever before. Big tech is using that to feed social media platforms that essentially are basically big marketing systems for people who buy advertising. You have to understand that the people around you are hurting for personal experience and connection. And if you can deliver that in a meaningful way and sincerely be of value to these individuals and put in a little bit of effort, an hour or two a day is really what it takes, you can start building these relationships and the mutual gain will come. Okay. We're not doing this just so we can get a better job. We're doing this to cultivate a group of peers that are constantly improving, connecting, and getting to the next level. Okay. As these folks get to the next level, everybody leapfrogs each other, everybody brings each other up, everybody provides mutual support and care. We're doing this because when you need an ear to lean on and you need practical advice, wouldn't it be nice to have a network of people who can help you with that? And that could be, again, your fraternity. It could be your social circles. It could be the country club. It could be a work career circle. It could be a lot of things that have to be cultivated. If you're not keeping a dossier, if you're not keeping a Rolodex, if you're not keeping a contact manager and following up on these people and making sure they're doing well, it takes a lot of emotional work on your part. And some people don't even care, but it is necessary that when a problem comes up, they're going to turn to you when you can solve that problem. When a situation comes up that can benefit you, they'll turn to you to solve the problem that they have. This is very important. This is part of strategic relations. It's not some kind of gimmick or some kind of tactic that you use. It is a cultivation of actual relationships. And again, I will admit, I'm more of a student of this than a practitioner. There are probably 3 to 5 relationships that if something came up that I could contact these individuals and they would help me out. They're not necessarily family members. And they can only help to a certain extent. So I've got to make sure I understand to what extent that they can help. And then there's a handful of people that if they called me, I would drop everything and go take care of the situation. This list of 100 will break down into 3 to 5 that are going to be that kind of connection. And even that is situational. And so you've got to understand what situations you can turn to who. Your network is tied to your net worth. And then when it comes time for influence, you have people who can advocate on your part. Now, if you need help cultivating that network, whether it is your Dream 100 for potential clients or it is your internal list for potential solutions in the future, we can help you work on that. We have coaching programs, we have one on one consultations, and there are practical and systematic approaches to build those lists, but the work has to be put in by yourself to call on these people, to check on these people, to make sure they're doing okay. And some of them will be confused. Like, why do you call me all the time? All we did is work together for a couple years. You've got to understand, you got to have reasons, you got to know why. And you have to be of benefit to these individuals. So if you're ready for a consultation, visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Go to the contact page and ask about a consultation. Otherwise, I'm Justin Hitt from the Inside Strategic Relations newsletter, and you can ask questions, and we have additional resources available. And I'd like to see you share some of your successes in your personal network. Bill Clinton, George Bush, every president has built out personal networks, and those networks have been lifelines when they have difficult and awkward situations. And it's not just political people, it's senior level executives, it's business leaders, it's individuals who are doing well and seem to never go a day in their life without a job. But it is a conscious activity. I want to thank you for listening to today's podcast. This episode was brought to you by my clients. And we continue to publish this free newsletter because we have a number of clients that make it possible. And so if you have questions about building business relationships, be sure to visit www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Go to the contact page and ask your questions. There's a free newsletter there as well. And then again, if you're ready for a consultation, if you're ready to take the next step, do so at that site. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next podcast.